I'm going to be quoting from the writer Comte de Privigny at length during this episode. He writes, quote, "These were buildings," referring to family homes, "that had housed the work and honour of their ancestors for hundreds of years, the transmission of which had involved sacrifices for other children and renunciations for their own parents, and which were finally sold to be transformed into ephemeral monetary compensation in an attempt to fill the bottomless abyss of inheritance and gift taxes. More shocks from the French Revolution, which, not content with having cut off the heads of lords and peasants, continues to take pleasure in stripping those of their descendants who still retain their honour. While Roman law gave complete freedom to family heads to assign a unique heir through a testament, customary laws contained specific provisions regarding inheritance depending on the region." De Previgny writes, quote, "During the Ancien Regime, in lands with written and customary law, a stable and common sense rule prevailed. The father of a family was free to dispose of what he had acquired and to pass it on, without being forced to divide what he himself had received. This right was illuminated by service to the common good, the concern to maintain and perpetuate a lineage despite the vicissitudes of life. Faith indicated the best way to maintain this balance. To pass on the family home, whether a hut, a farm, or a castle, to the firstborn. Occasionally, the testator took the liberty of designating a more balanced younger son, but it could also happen that, in the absence of a son, or due to a son's lack of merit, he preferred a daughter. But he always did so in the service of something that surpassed him, the lineage. And he did not feel like the owner of that which he was, ultimately, nothing more than a custodian. His only mission was to perpetuate, either by enriching or increasing it, the heritage of his parents, since in its continuation he was nothing more than a link in a long chain. Let us not imagine that such provisions reduced younger sons and daughters to a terrible slavery, because parents were not lacking in tenderness for their other children. Daughters received dowries, sometimes generously calculated. Marriages were skillfully conducted, often in a more balanced manner than today, without sacrificing love between spouses, contrary to popular belief. The preservation of family lands entailed obligations that their custodians had to systematically fulfill. The allocation of certain lands, guaranteeing payment for services, tasks, or studies performed by other brothers, and providing dowries for their sisters. All of this could stifle the firstborn's capacity for action. A member of the 18th century bourgeoisie stated this in his will, quote, "By ensuring my youngest descendant the means to preserve the paternal home, this precious heritage of my ancestors, it may seem to you that I have preferred him more than the others. Don't be fooled. He has many burdens already stipulated in addition to the unforeseen ones that are now impossible to calculate, so he will never live in peace." End quote. So you see how the old system of inheritance that tended to favour primogeniture, although it gave liberty in most cases to the testator to pass on his estate as he saw fit, it was based on obligation, on duty. And we see that the modern system is based on the assertion of rights without the commensurate duties and obligations. The old system placed great obligations on the elder siblings who would inherit the intact family property to look after their younger siblings. De Previgny continues, quote, "Christian society in past times was well aware that the transmission of property, however modest, preserved, in keeping with the cycles of nature, the continuity of exemplary generations that succeeded one another over time. Then the tongues of the egalitarians were loosed. They were called Mirabeau, Pisson, Dupont de Nemours, and Robespierre. These men wrote copiously about new concepts called social regeneration or purification, and on March the 7th, 1793, the National Convention issued an arbitrary decree on matters of succession. Quote, the right to dispose of one's property, both mortis causa and inter vivos, by contractual donation in a direct line, is hereby abolished. Consequently, all descendants shall receive an equal share of the property of their ancestors. End quote. In this way, the nascent republic, which boasted of defending liberty and serving the individual, muzzled the testator for the benefit of the revolutionary state by imposing its own ideology, in this case absolute equality. The result of such a law was quite evident. Unless they owned as many properties and lands as they had children, parents had to sell the family patrimony to compensate their newly born children. Thus, the heritage assets preserved for centuries were doomed to disintegration. The effects of this new legislation were dramatic. Not only did it encourage birth restrictions for economic reasons, but it also left the most deadly fratricidal discord in the hands of those born. End quote. Comte de Prévigny writes, quote, "The goal of the French Revolution had been achieved. The slow demolition of family patrimonies was about to take place, for the absolute and obligatory equality of children was nothing more than a pretext in the eyes of the legislators. With the expression, progress of humanity, they placed as their priority objective the destruction of the exercise of paternal authority, the annihilation of the family in its patriarchal conception, and the rejection of ties to a past they hated so much that they attempted to instill in the minds of their rebellious siblings the ferment of baseless jealousy. The revolution, so cynical, turned the minors born into the best families, much to their chagrin, into the most fervent servants by cultivating the evil inclinations of human nature." End quote. Oscar Mendez writes, quote, "The peasant family is not an economic variable. It is the living guardian of a Christian way of being in the world. Austere, fruitful, faithful to the rhythm of the Creator. It is not limited to producing food. It transmits values, weaves communities, preserves memories, and sanctifies the land with the work of its hands. In it, the essential dimensions of the natural and supernatural order converge. Work as a vocation and oblation. Fatherhood as a concrete authority exercised in cultivation and protection. The community as a visible extension of the domestic church. The prayer woven in the same furrow where sweat falls and hope rises. The rural man, torn from his homeland, is mercilessly thrown out of the world that still murmured the hymns of creation, where the plough was prayer, bread offering, and the calendar sacramental. An economy without a soul is not development, it is collapse management. A policy without subsidiarity is not justice, it is administrative tyranny. An ecology without love for the earth and its creator is not guardianship, it is ideological paganism. Technical reforms are not enough. A profound conversion is needed, one that places man, family, land, sacrifice, and God at the centre of all political architecture." Comte de Prévigny concludes, quote, "Faced with the effects of the corrosive revolutionary poison that seeks to turn citizens into ships without moorings, drifting aimlessly to the sound of the sirens of this world, the French still have several possibilities to preserve the inheritances inherited from the past and to transmit some anchoring points to their descendants. The work of those parents who seek to ensure that their children grow up under the gaze of God is already enormous. To the extent that their economic possibilities remain after fulfilling their primary and necessary objectives, their work can be completed by a series of patrimonial decisions that bind them to a home and to land, which after their death can unite its members in a common dwelling and to receive the prayers of those who survive them. Certainly, revolutionary legislation makes it difficult for such plans to continue, but if they are not adopted, the unity of the family will be jeopardized, since the prince of this world will sow the vice of discord where the parents have left nothing prepared. Is it prudent to abandon one's heirs to fratricidal struggles that will distance them from the faith, because carelessness and ignorance lead to a poor death plan? Death strikes at any age, and some deaths can be premature. Like the wise virgins in the parable, Christians seek advice, know how to anticipate diverse family situations, and don't wait for the holy viaticum to be delivered to them before considering the various possibilities offered by inheritance law. But all this requires prior reflection that clashes with the taboo of death and sometimes has to overcome self-respect. The revolution sought the ruin of family patrimony to profit from individual consumption. On the contrary, the spirit of Christian France encourages us to conserve our possessions in order to better shed what we have already planned to give, and rather than considering ourselves the owner, we consider ourselves a guest passing through, wisely awaiting a blessed eternity." End quote.